Welcome at a new episode of the Pure Gospel on the Flat Earth. In today's video I want to discuss with you the idea of gravity and why it basically doesn't exist. So just recently Neil deGrasse Tyson dropped a microphone to the ground and wanted to make everyone believe that this was proof somehow for the existence of gravity.
When you stand on the shoulders of those who came before, you might just see far enough to realize the earth isn't flat. And by the way, this is called gravity.
Gravity on the one hand would be responsible for objects falling to the ground. On the other hand, gravity would be responsible for holding all living and non-living matter onto the surface of this spinning earth. In the meanwhile, also compensating or counterbalancing, to be more precise, the force of the surrounding vacuum of space. So this would basically be the function of gravity. However, when it is asked to scientists what gravity basically is, so Neil deGrasse Tyson has been asked this question, what is gravity? And then he isn't able to explain it.
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
Wow.
No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know.
So did I accidentally ask a deeper question than I meant to?
Yeah, no, you were meant to ask deep questions.
Apparently I was.
In life. So to say, what is it? I think Einstein, in an Einsteinian answer, we would say gravity is the curvature of space and time. And objects will follow the curvature of space-time, and we interpret that as a force of gravity. That's probably the best answer I can give to a what is gravity question, or why is there gravity. That's the best I can do there. I think that's a good start. And I can also say that Einstein noted that matter tells space how to curve, space tells matter how to move.
Gravity, as defined by Newton and defined by Einstein, is completely contradictory. So these people came up with entirely contradicting ideas about what gravity basically is.
Now, Newton wrote a huge tome basically to describe his theory of gravity. Now, when Einstein came along, he gave a completely different interpretation of what gravity is. So that means everything Newton produced was bullshit. No, bear with me, yeah? If he wrote all this calculus and came up with a theory that didn't quite match, what we observe, yeah, which means it had no relationship to reality, and Einstein came along and gave a completely different interpretation, which apparently does match up. That means that whole book is bullshit. He made it all up.
I actually totally agree with you.
In these days, people tend to go with Einstein, so then obviously what Newton was telling about gravity didn't hold any water and was basically wrong. So just recently, another guy came up with another theory of gravity, and he's a Dutch scientist called Erik Verlinde. And what he is basically saying is that gravity, as it is commonly understood, does not exist, and that is just an assumption basically. And he came up with an entirely different theory.
I mean, gravity, of course, is something that has well, many people have already thought about it. It's something that we see every day, and it's not like it's not existent in our every life. But what I mean by that it's an illusion is that one would eventually like to know where it comes from, an explanation. Up to now we have, well, descriptions. I mean, Newton, of course, is the one famous for first writing down a theory of gravity. And he could describe why apples fall and why the moon goes around the Earth using the same basic equation for gravity. But he described it. He had to assume that gravity was there, and then had to write down a law that described that when two masses are at a certain distance, how they attract each other. But he was also not very happy with the fact that he should just assume that these things, these objects, attract each other and without even anything in between. So if there are two masses in empty space, there's no nothing that really happens between them, but still they're attracting each other. And he thought that was kind of mysterious, and that it was something he would have liked to explain in a better way. So later came Einstein, and Einstein, with his theory of relativity, eventually realized that also gravity has to be described in a different way. And it took him quite some years, but then eventually he wrote down a theory where he thought about space and time together. And then his explanation of what gravity would be is that there's masses which curve space and time. And then the motion of planets and of the Earth around the Moon, or the Moon around the Earth, is then described by thinking about moving in this curved space-time and how then objects are well, making their orbits. And the reason they go around then in circles is that that space and time itself is curved, in the sense that things don't move in straight lines anymore, they go around. So that was his explanation, but he had to write down an equation for it, which again assumed that gravity is there, because he basically wrote down that the matter curves the space-time. So in a certain way that's still a description, or what I should say is, well, one would like to understand again why this description sort of, well, how you can understand it from a more basic point of view. So what I've done in my paper is try to start from a point of view where you don't assume gravity to be there. You would like to explain it by seeing how you can derive it from a more microscopic set of equations where gravity itself is not assumed, but then just follows from a certain logical reasoning.
And what he also said was that Newton did not explain anything. So he did not explain what gravity basically is. So in another video we made on gravity, at this one, we included some of the fragments which show you the highly inconsistent nature of this mystical notion of gravity. So let's go into some of the fragments.
So, the International Space Station and the Hubble telescope is free from gravity in outer space, yet will move along the Earth equal to the speed of the Earth and the spin of the Earth as the Earth travels around the Sun. And gravity is pulling it towards, and the Earth won't smack into the space station or the Hubble telescope, the water drops will indicate the motion of the water sprinkler. But they will have you believe that this water sprinkler is spinning around the Earth at 1,600 kilometers an hour at the equator and at over 500,000 kilometers as it moves around the Sun. But this water sprinkler will only indicate motion when you pick it up. And when you move the water sprinkler around, then it will show the movement that you place on the water sprinkler. You see, and you realize, this is rubbish. They're lying to us. So the water sprinkler, when you're not touching it, is spinning at 1,600 kilometers an hour, easterly, and doesn't give any indication of this motion. But when you pick it up and you move it north and south, yes, then it will only show that motion, but not the motion easterly. And at the same time, this water sprinkler is traveling at 500,000 kilometers and over that speed, faster than a rifle bullet, and that the Earth won't move into the water droplets, smack into the water droplets, and behind, the water droplets won't move away from the Earth. You realize that this is fairy stories. This is ridiculous. How can people believe this?
When taking all this into account, we think that it's safe to just get rid of this concept because, like we said, it's inconsistent. Moreover, there's no need to invoke such an inconsistent concept of gravity on a flat, stationary Earth. So other factors like density, the weak force and the strong force, and electromagnetism perfectly suffice and explain reality as we observe it. So when it comes to the forces going on in this world. Moreover, even if there was no evidence for the flat Earth, it would still make no sense to appeal to a force which is inconsistent and which is basically an assumption, so for which there's no evidence. So all in all, we think that it's safe to just get rid of this concept and to conclude that there's no gravity whatsoever. So we live on this flat, stationary Earth. Obviously the Earth does not spin either, and there's no vacuum of space. We think it's safe to conclude that there's not even something like a vacuum of space. So there you have it, guys. That was it for today. I will hope you've enjoyed this video, and hopefully we'll see you at the next episode of the Pure Gospel on the Flat Earth. Thank you all for watching.